네, 안녕하세요. 저기 바쁘신 와중에 이렇게 참여해 주셔서 감사합니다. 오늘은 미국과 캐나다, 제가 제 인사를 먼저 말씀드리겠습니다. 저는, 미국에서 영상 제작 개발 배급 관련 일을 하고 있고요. 그리고 콘텐츠진흥원 LA 비즈니스센터 컨설팅 하고 있는 강석희라고 합니다. 예, 반갑습니다. 네, 오늘 말씀 나눠주실 사라 비 쿠퍼님은 미국과 캐나다에서 30년 넘게 텔레비전과 영화 산업에 종사하고 계십니다. 그리고 그 외에도 프랑스, 영국, 루안다 등 여러 나라들과 함께 제작 경험을 가지고 계시고요. 예, 또 여러분이 잘 아시는 툼레이더, 라라 크로프트 영화를 비롯해서 뭐 다양한 작품들 하셨는데요. 예, 그 중에서도 어, 여러분 아시는 시카고 호프도 하셨고, 그 다음에 유닛이라는 또 아주 좋은 드라마도 하셨고, 어, 뭐 다양한 지금 이제 본인이 또 설명을 좀 해주실 거예요. 본인이 하셨던 작품들에서 관련해서. 그리고 이제 오늘 어, 정말 한국 창작자분, 작가분들한테 이 재산권 권리와 미국 제작사와 스트리머와 어떻게 협상하는 것이 좋을 것인가에 관해서 말씀을 나눠주실 텐데, 예, 말씀 들으시고 많은 도움 되시면 좋겠습니다. 네. Sarah, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, hello. My name is Sarah Cooper. He said, I've been working in television and film industry for over 30 years, both in the United States and Canada, and I've also worked on several co-productions with France, the UK, and Rwanda. Let me just take over the screen. 잠깐만요.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Can you see? Did it work? Okay. Over the past few years, I've been studying Korean film and TV, and one thing became clear. For Korean writers and creators, understanding intellectual property rights and how to negotiate with US producers and streamers is crucial for reaching the very eager North American market. With the worldwide boom in Korean content, whether K-dramas, webtoons, or variety shows, the US streamers like Netflix, Apple TV, and Disney Plus are investing heavily in Korean originals and co-productions. In this landscape, intellectual property ownership has become a key driver of value creation, not just through production fees, but also through remakes, format sales, merchandising, and adaptations. And at the heart of it all is one critical factor: control of the rights. So that's exactly what we're going to explore today. And even though my focus will be on the US, much of what we'll cover also applies when working with producers in Commonwealth countries such as Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. Since this is such a big topic and we'll only have a short amount of time, we'll keep things simple. I'll walk you through some key industry terms, explain the differences between shopping agreements, options, and purchases, and touch on common negotiation issues, along with a few strategies that can help create win-win situations. Is someone not muted? Sorry. Okay. This presentation only scratches the surface, so I'll share some reliable resources at the end where you can dive deeper and find trustworthy information. So the information that I'm presenting to you here comes from my own experience and research into IP negotiations. Over the years, I've been involved in over a dozen projects that have dealt with IP negotiations. Keep in mind that IP rights agreements are complex legal contracts that govern ownership, exploitation, and distribution of property. Any specific legal questions you have should be addressed to an IP lawyer or licensed agent who can assure that the rights are clearly defined and protected. In other words, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm definitely not your lawyer, and although I have written for some in television. What I'm sharing today isn't a substitute for getting legal advice tailored to your situation. Think of this as a basic introduction into IP negotiations, something to help familiarize you with the key steps and terms, and to give you a solid starting point for conversations between you as the IP holder and the producers. So, Please bear with me as we dive into some definitions of terms. Some of these might be a review for a few of you, but for others, they all might be brand new. And let's start with the term rights. Simply put, the term rights refers to ownership. The person or entity that holds the rights gets to decide how the property is used and exploited. When I say exploited, I mean everything from using, selling, marketing, advertising, licensing, and any other activity that can generate revenue from the IP. In other words, the rights holder is the only one who can sell, option, or make money from the property. This ownership can be broken into a lot of different pieces. Rights are not just the right to make a television production, but all other ways to use the IP. So video game usage, stage show usage, books using the characters usage, merchandising, etc. Different usage rights can be sold to different companies at the same time, and this is called non-exclusivity. So gaming rights can be sold to a video game company and TV rights can be sold to a TV producer as long as the rights holder isn't selling the same rights twice. These rights can be passed from one entity to another through what's called the chain of title. Title basically refers to ownership of the property, though I'm not sure why it isn't just called the chain of ownership, but that's legal jargon for you. The chain of title is the documented history of an IP's ownership, tracing it from the original creator to the current owner. It's made up of documents that prove who legally owns the rights and how it's legally transferred at every step along the way. So, if I write a screenplay, I own the rights. But if a production company hires me and pays me to write it or buys it from me, the company then owns the rights. If that production company later sells the project to a streamer and receives payment, the streamer becomes the rights holder. At each step, there are legal processes and usually a monetary exchange, all carefully documented. Sometimes, however, the chain of title isn't clear, and this can happen if a producer or a production company knowingly or accidentally uses an author's work without their permission. And that's what we call an infringement of rights. So here's an example. There was a comedian named Art Buchwald who once pitched an idea to Paramount Pictures, but they didn't buy it. Years later, for whatever reason, Paramount used the idea without paying him and made a movie called Coming to America. In 1990, Buchwald sued, claiming they stole his idea and turned it into a screenplay without credit or compensation. Paramount argued that they hadn't made a profit, even though the film raked in $288 million. The judge ruled in Buchwald's favor. So, having a clear chain of title and legal transfer of rights could have avoided that situation. So we start with the original IP holder. This is the starting point where the creator, writer, or producer has access to or ownership of a piece of intellectual property, either an original idea, a script, or an underlying work. Next comes the shopping agreement between the IP holder and the representative. And I'm going to use the term representative to mean a director, producer, production company, anyone that is interested in helping sell the project. We're going to go into depth later on that, but for the sake of defining terms, a shopping agreement is used when a representative wants to shop the IP or a project based on it to networks, streamers, or studios. It grants the representative temporary rights to present the IP to potential buyers. So from here, if the representative is successful in generating a legitimate interest in the project from the buyers or talent, it could lead to a licensing agreement, and I'll talk about that in a bit, an option agreement, or a purchase agreement. The option agreement gives the buyer the exclusive right, but not the obligation, to purchase the IP rights within a certain time frame. Buyers like studios or streamers usually require that the underlying rights be locked in via an option before proceeding. So if a deal is made, in other words, a network orders a pilot or series, the producer or studio exercises the option, which leads to a purchase agreement. This transfers ownership or exclusive production rights from the IP holder to the buyer or grants a long-term license, the buyer now fully controls the IP for the intended use, whether it's a TV series, limited series, or whatever. Let's quickly talk about the terms optioning, licensing, and selling and break down the differences between them. An option is like putting a temporary reservation on a piece of intellectual property, say a book or a screenplay. It gives someone, a writer, producer, studio, or company, the exclusive right to buy or license that IP later on. Options usually last from 12 to 18 months, and during that time, the IP holder can't sell the rights to anyone else. In exchange for that exclusivity, the option holder pays a fee, and it's usually a relatively small one. So, for example, I once optioned a novel for $10,000, which gave me the exclusive rights to develop it into a TV show for a period of 12 months. Now, most options also include an extension clause where you can buy more time for an additional fee. In my case, even though several companies were interested and one was on the verge of saying yes, the author decided not to move forward as she had second thoughts about making her book into a television series. We discussed it at length and let the option expire, and at that time, the rights reverted back to her. Now, licensing is a legal agreement that gives someone the right to use the intellectual property, usually for a specific purpose, a specific time period, and a specific territory. It lets the licensee legally use or commercialize the IP. Licenses can be exclusive, meaning only that the licensee can use the IP, or non-exclusive, meaning that others can license it too. They often involve upfront fees, royalties, or both, and can last for a set number of years or even indefinitely. So, for example, a video game developer might license a character from a comic book. They pay a fee, maybe royalties, and gain the right to use that character for the duration of the licensing term. Selling, on the other hand, involves completely transferring ownership rights to another entity, usually in exchange for a lump sum payment. Now, before any deals are sealed for good, the buyer will need to examine the chain of title to ensure the rights are fully secured. So I'm going to briefly go over what it takes to establish the chain of title and the documents needed. Generally, you're looking for something like underlying rights agreement, and this could be an agreement with someone's life story. You have an agreement with them, or an original book that they might have written. But then there are also writers' agreements, the writers that you hire to work on it, or the writers who have brought you the project themselves. There's also contributor agreements. That's the agreements when, during development, if a director, say, has input to it and controls a piece of the property. There are talent agreements for actors, voice actors, or real actors. And then there's assignment and transfer documents. And that's for things like when one entity if there's a merger, let's say, transfers the ownership to another company. Before we go off this topic, I want to quickly look at E&O insurance providers because all buyers will have E&O insurance. E&O stands for errors and omissions, and it's basically liability insurance. They protect your business up to the policy limits if a client claims that advice or services you provided caused them financial harm, whether due to a real or alleged mistake or a failure to perform a service. E&O insurance providers demand a clear chain of title. So now let's talk about representatives and shopping agreements. Many IP holders, those who own the property, are turning to writers and showrunners to help sell their products in North America. Since most writers don't have the funds to option or buy the rights outright, the first step for you as the IP holder is to secure a shopping agreement with a representative, which could be a writer, a showrunner, a producer, or someone else who can help bring the project to the market. When a representative has a shopping agreement, it gives them, and only them, the right to talk about the project and generate interest, or even secure financing from production companies, broadcasters, or streamers. It's the representative's job to work on drawing attention, securing backing, and seeking opportunities for your IP. Generally, the way that the representative will do that is to put together a pitch document or a sales document. And it's usually 1 to 2 pages, or in my case, it's usually 3. This document typically includes the logline or the premise of the show's story engine, basically what drives the story forward and what audiences will see each week, the tone and themes of the show, a basic description of the main characters, and potential multi-season arcs. And just to give you some more definitions, for clarity, when I say premise, I'm talking about the core structural elements of the story. So for example, if I decided, or if someone hired me to represent them for a show like The Racket Boys, the premise for Racket Boys might look like this. When offered a job coaching badminton at a high school in a small town in Alberta, a sweet but clueless unemployed ex-badminton star and father of 2 must move his family from Florida to Canada, much to his children's dismay, in order to pay off his debts and prevent losing custody to his ex-wife, a successful Canadian women's badminton coach. That is what a premise might look like. Now, a story engine is something that generates an endless stream of storylines that provides a framework for the writers to create new plots for each episode. It's a map for the buyer to see where the show will be going. So for example, a story engine for Racket Boys might look like this. Based on the popular Korean drama, Racket Boys is an hour-long serialized drama that blends a little Ted Lasso, a little Friday Night Lights, and a little Schitt's Creek to create a humorous, heartwarming family story about estranged parents who are trying to find their way back together despite their hurtful past, and their children who are trying to find their own identities within the rarely explored world of high-stakes badminton. Now, let's talk about who you want to be your representative. You'll want someone, a person or production company, who has a good reputation and experience in the entertainment business and will be taken seriously by potential producers or buyers. You'll want someone whose vision for adapting your original IP to the US market is in alignment with your values and visions. You want someone who'll be willing to collaborate, and this could mean a willingness to work with a Korean writer if Korean content is represented, or someone who is willing to take a producer's credit instead of a showrunner credit if the buyer likes the project but wants a more experienced showrunner attached. You also want someone you can communicate with easily. Mutual respect is always nice. A quick word of advice. You may be tempted to bring on someone with a big name and a lot of power or clout in the industry. But if they don't truly understand your project or respect the core message of the IP, it can cause problems later on. Okay, so once you've found a representative, you'll need a shopping agreement. Here are some key things to know about shopping agreements. The cost. There's no upfront money. A shopping agreement doesn't involve any payment. You might find a writer who's really excited about your project, has a strong vision for it, and has connections to production companies, actors, or others who can help get it greenlit, but they don't have the funds to option it. With a shopping agreement, they don't pay up front. Instead, for a set period of time, they get to take the project around to generate interest. And there is a specified timeline in shopping agreements, usually 6 to 12 months with extensions. Exclusivity. The representative is the only one who can pitch or sell this property during this period in 1 or more territories. The IP owner retains rights until a buyer is found. In a shopping agreement, there is a promise that, should a sales occur, the representative will be attached to the project in some way, often as an executive producer or a showrunner or head writer. Now, if the representative finds a potential buyer, the buyer will then negotiate an option purchase agreement with the IP holder to replace the shopping deal. In addition, the buyer will negotiate directly with the representative the terms of their involvement. Because the shopping agreement is a low-risk way for an interested representative to package and pitch a project without paying for an upfront option, it makes it attractive to IP owners who want someone with industry access to shop their work. But there are risks. If the representative can't sell the project within the agreed-upon exclusivity period, the IP holder is essentially tied up with no money coming in. And that's why most IP holders prefer shorter shopping agreements, but sometimes a longer term makes sense, or a shorter term with an agreed-upon extension. For example, a representative might want to package the project by securing a star actor, a director, or even helping shape the script, and that can take extra time. So just a quick reminder, the chain of title is the proof of ownership in all transfers, and it's crucial for distribution and financing. A shopping agreement, on the other hand, gives someone temporary exclusive rights to pitch or sell the project. It's a step before an option or purchase, but it doesn't create a full chain of title because no actual rights have been transferred. So just so we keep things simple, from here on in, I'll use the term buyer to refer to anyone investing money in the project, whether that's a producer, production company, network, or streamer. When a shopping agreement succeeds and a buyer steps in, the next stage is typically an option agreement with payment, followed by a purchase agreement, full transfer of rights. These documents then form, of course, the chain of title. So the shopping agreement is like dating. An option is like an engagement, and a purchase agreement is a marriage with a transfer of property. Okay, so let's look at what that means in more detail. After laying this groundwork, let's talk about negotiations. Again, just to reiterate, I am not a lawyer, nor is this legal advice. This is just an overview of some issues that tend to come up and strategies for navigating them. When working with IP, issues arise due to the opposite nature of the wants and needs of the IP holder and the buyers. Of course, everyone wants as big a piece of the pie as possible, but there is an advantage to compromise. One important note specific to Korean content: most Korean TV shows are designed as single-season projects, while the US and Canada model often expects at least 3 seasons or more. If the IP holder asks for too much from the buyer upfront, it can affect the long-term feasibility of the show. The risk may be too high, and the buyer could either walk away or cancel the show after 1 season. So the goal of both sides should be to create a viable, long-running show with extensive growth and marketability potential. A smaller initial payout that accumulates over a longer period, can be more advantageous than a larger payout with an accumulation that only lasts for a short time. So in your negotiations, please try to keep that big picture in mind. Now, let's take some look at examples of issues and strategies in negotiation. Scope of rights. When I talk about the scope of rights, I'm referring to exactly how a piece of IP can be used. Clearly defining the scope ensures the creator or IP holder retains control over their work and under what term it's used. Doing this properly allows both parties to make the most of the IP, whether in specific markets across different platforms or over time. It also helps prevent legal disputes like issues over territorial encroachment, overuse of rights, or granting conflicting rights to multiple parties. A well-defined scope of rights provides flexibility so the IP can be leveraged in different regions, media, or derivative works down the line. So when it comes to the scope of rights, what the IP holder wants is to limit the rights to one type of media, like television, while retaining rights to publishing, podcasting, stage, and merchandise. But what the buyer wants is to acquire all the rights in all the media, through the universe, in perpetuity, forever and ever. Amen. A possible compromise could be that the IP holder can grant audiovisual, which is TV and film, and limited ancillary rights associated with audiovisual, such as merchandising, but they might retain stage plays, publishing, podcasting rights, unless they are directly tied to the show. Another issue is exclusivity. With an exclusive license, the buyer gets sole rights to use the IP. Nobody else, not even the IP holder, can touch it. A non-exclusive license is different. The IP holder can give the same rights to multiple people, so several licensees can use the IP at the same time. What the IP holder wants is non-exclusive or narrow exclusivity. They want to be able to license that IP or sell that IP to as many entities as possible over as many media sources as possible. And of course, what the buyer wants is absolute exclusivity across all media. A compromise could be exclusiveness for audiovisual adaptations like television or film, while carving out certain reserved rights, for example, stage plays or webtoons or games. As for the length of the option, what the IP holder wants is a short option, 12 to 18 months, high fees, fast reversion, and as I mentioned before, a reversion is the return of the rights or properties back to the original owner after a specified period of time and under certain conditions. But meanwhile, what the buyer wants is longer options, 18 to 24 months, with the ability to renew multiple times. In Canada, for example, it's common to have an option period with a second and third extension to make a 3-year plus option. A compromise can be 18 months for the initial option, with one extension with an escalating fee, with the understanding that if there is demonstrable movement and a distinct possibility of a sale, there could be a future extension. Now, let's say a production company wants to option. What the IP holder wants is a significant, upfront, non-recoupable fee. But what the buyer wants is a low fee applicable to a purchase price. And a compromise could be that a fee that applies to the purchase price, and if the time period is extended, higher payments are required. Let's talk about purchase prices. What the IP holder wants is to maximize the value of the IP and might ask for a percentage of the projected budget of the project, with a floor or a minimum amount to be paid to the IP holder. What the buyer wants is to minimize the value and ask for a fixed buyout, capped at a maximum amount. And a compromise could be a percentage of the budget with a set cap, maximum, and floor, minimum, to protect both sides, with the possibility of bonuses. This is the fun part. When negotiating intellectual property in television, bonuses are extra financial incentives that can be added on top of the base price. They're often tied to specific milestones, achievements, or terms in the agreement. And here are some common types of bonuses you might see in a TV IP negotiation. For example, you could ask for success-based bonuses. These bonuses are typically tied to the success or performance of the show, either in terms of viewership, critical acclaim, or revenue generation. There can also be renewal and/or continuation bonuses, and these are bonuses that are paid when the show is renewed for an additional season or is picked up for a follow-up project like a spin-off, sequel, or prequel. Then there are equity profit participations. Instead of a straightforward bonus, some deals offer a share in the ongoing profits of the show, and this includes things like back-end participation, which is a percentage of the net profits that the creator or rights holder receives. It's not guaranteed bonus, but can lead to a significant financial reward depending on the show's success. There's also gross revenue share. In some very high-profile deals, The creators or original IP holders might negotiate for a percentage of the gross revenue generated by the show, including from ancillary markets like merchandising, streaming, or international syndication. And lastly, there's merchandising and licensing bonuses. If the IP includes merchandise rights, say toys or clothing or video games and so on, creators and other stakeholders may receive a bonus or a cut of the revenue generated by licensing and merchandising deals. So regarding bonuses, what the IP holder wants is payments for sequels, prequels, spin-offs, awards, renewals, as many bonuses as possible. But what the buyer wants is to resist bonuses, have only a flat fee. A compromise is a tiered bonus schedule, which outlines increasing bonus amounts tied to increasing levels of success, like revenue, viewers, or other measurable bookmarks. So, for example, they might receive extra if the show is greenlit, or if a sequel is produced, or if the show is nominated for an Emmy Award, or so on. This rewards the IP owner more as the product succeeds, while allowing the buyer to delay higher payments until they are earning more. And this leads into back-end profits. Back-end profits are incredibly complicated, but in general, it's the share of profits or revenue that creators, producers, or key talent receives after the show's initial production and distribution costs are covered. It's usually calculated as a percentage of net profits or gross revenue, and it's performance-based, meaning it depends on the show's financial success beyond just getting made. What the IP holder wants is a share of the back end, the net and gross profits. What the buyer wants is no back-end profits, just a flat fee buyout. A compromise could be is after the initial price, the IP holder is awarded agreed upon success-based contingent bonuses. The price increase is contingent on the success of the show. And as said before, the buyer then can delay higher payments until they themselves make more revenue. Next, I want to talk about credit. In the United States, credits are determined by the Writers Guild of America, and in Canada, they're determined by the Writers Guild of Canada. The Guild is the final authority on who gets credit for writing the screenplay, the original story, or creating characters based on an IP. If you want to work with an American or Canadian writer, you need to be a signatory to the respective writers' guilds. And if a production company is a signatory to the Guild's basic agreement, it must follow the Guild's rules. What the IP holder wants is something prominent, like based on the Webtoon buy, used on screen and in all marketing, because every time that occurs, money gets paid. What the buyer wants is to give minimal credit, often subject to Writers Guild rules. A compromise is to add something like, based on the Webtoon buy, and used in the main titles and all paid ads, but not used for all marketing. Now, an example of where the credits did not go in the IP holder's favor, well, I won't say it like that, but The Good Doctor, credit is only acknowledged by a title card that reads, based on the Korean Broadcasting System television. It is one of the only places that you see that credit. Let's talk about approvals. The concept of approvals is all about who gets to make creative and sometimes marketing decisions. What the IP holder wants is approval over writers, directors, cast, and script. Meanwhile, what the buyer often wants is no IP holder creative involvement at all, or only meaningful consultation at best. And what I mean by meaningful consultation is that within a specific amount of time, The buyer will discuss and carefully consider the views of the IP holder when making decisions on such things as casting, directors, and script. A compromise could be that the IP holder has approvals on limited items, for example, the use of their name, and possibly one set of script notes, with meaningful consultation on all other creative matters. Now, as I spoke of before, reversions of rights is an issue that comes up, and that permits IP holders to regain some or all of the rights when certain conditions are met. So let's look at the chart. If the writer writes original material and the company buys it, the company owns the rights. If the pilot is produced and from that a series is produced, the company continues to own the rights. But if a series is not produced, the rights could revert back to the writer. Or if a pilot isn't produced in the first place, the rights can revert back to the writer. So I have what I call my lucky, unlucky pilot. I had it optioned after I first wrote it, and it wasn't produced, and the rights reverted back to me. Then it was optioned again, and then it wasn't produced, and the rights reverted back to me. Then it was optioned again, and it wasn't produced, and I'm still holding the rights. And maybe one day it will get produced. That would be nice. Okay. So in reversions of rights, what the IP holder wants is that the rights are reverted if the project is not produced within 3 to 5 years. But what the buyer often wants is to resist reversions and keep the rights if the rights have been bought. And a compromise could be that reversion happens when a set period passes and no production gets underway. Another possible compromise is this. If the original buyer has paid the purchase price and the production didn't start, and the project is reverted back to the original IP holder, and then sold to a new buyer, and the new buyer begins production, the original buyer could get their money back once production begins with the new buyer. Understanding the territorial aspect of distribution is crucial. Territorial rights refers to the legal rights held by a content owner, distributor, or platform to stream or distribute content in a specific geographic region or country. These rights are a critical component of how content is licensed and distributed globally. A territory can be defined by geography, either globally, so for example, a Netflix original is available everywhere, or regionally. For example, a Chinese drama might only be licensed for Asia. It can be limited to a nation, for example, South Korea only, or defined by a language, like, say, rights to an area that uses a specific language, such as Spanish. This is why a show or a movie available in France might not be available in the US, even on the same platform. Streaming services like Netflix, Disney+, Amazon Prime Video, and regional platforms such as Hotstar, Viaplay, and Stan must negotiate and secure rights to stream content in specific territories. These rights directly affect what content is available, where, and for how long. And to enforce a territorial right, platforms use geo-blocking to restrict access on the viewer's IP address. So streaming services also license content. For example, Netflix may have the global rights to a new series it produces in-house, but for a third-party show, let's say The Office, it may only have rights in certain countries, while another service, for example, Peacock, holds them in the US. So knowing exactly which territories your buyer wants to claim is vital. For example, a Canadian company that creates content that is distributed globally will not want to limit their territory to just Canada. What the IP holder wants is limited territorial rights, and what the buyer wants is global exclusive rights. A compromise can be that you can negotiate exclusive rights in certain territories, let's say the US and Canada, and non-exclusive rights in other territories. For example, this could allow local TV networks in your home country to carry the show. And sometimes carve-outs such as theatrical, free TV, or airline rights are possible. So that covers the main points I wanted to share about IP negotiation in the US, and I hope it's been helpful. Before I leave you with some handy resources, I'd love to take any questions that you might have. So let me see if I can push
네,
this.
thank you, Sarah. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. It was great. So 여기 참여하신 분들 중에서 지금 보시고 혹시 내용 중에서 질문하실 부분 있으면 편하게 해주십시오. 여기 텍스트로 올려주시면 제가 보고 그 질문들 가운데서 사라님에게 질문을 드리고요. 그 답변 드리도록 하겠습니다. 혹시 질문들 있으시면 여기 텍스트 창에다가 질문을 넣어주십시오. 네, 첫 번째 질문이 hey, so there's one question. Who's gonna like in terms of the chain of title, which
Yes.
organization is manage or care, or how we can just like someone who wanna see chain of title is whether it exists or whether it's true or not, how they figure out.
So that there are usually lawyers that specifically investigate chain of title. And so if you're presented with a property that you are not clear what the chain of title is, you can hire an IP lawyer, an intellectual property lawyer, to do the research, and they will track down all of the existing documents that could show a legal transfer of chain of title. That is probably your best bet to determine if a property has a good, clear, clean chain of title. Did that answer the question? Or
Yeah, so I mean also the question is like, is there any organization that kind of take care of the chain of title? I don't think there's gonna be any organization specifically
there's
for.
no one specific organization. You have to hire lawyers who are they specifically work in licensing and IP products, IP negotiations. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it is kind of difficult to kind of track all the records, right? So that's why they usually hire a lawyer to
Yeah.
take care of that part. So that was the question. So there's a question saying, like the concept of chain of title is not clear to, the one of the audience here. So that's the kind of new concept here, I guess. Like so usually in the when we work in the Hollywood, we usually the first thing we're gonna be doing when we try to have a like any IP contract or anything, we're gonna be check the chain of title. That's the
Yes.
first thing, right? So
Yeah, yes. I'm sorry. You need to make sure that whoever is holding the rights or the IP is the legal owner. Yes.
yes. So basically, the best way to do it is hiring a lawyer and let them, just track down all the information.
Yes, but it could be as simple as if it depends on how many steps there are. But if, for example, let's say that you come up with an idea and you pitch it to Kim Un-sok, and then she writes it. She holds that, and when she sells it, there will be a document saying that whoever bought it now owns it. You could claim that it is an unclear chain of title because you gave her the information and weren't credited or paid. So any type of unclarity around that needs to be very, very clearly defined.
Yeah, that's true. But it is at the same time, like some of the audience is like clear about how they're gonna figure it out, because it's the only, owner or the production company or studio, they only, know about those kind of information. So they
Uh-huh.
can just, different people can say different, like thoughts. So that's basically, it sounds like kind of difficult to find out who exactly got the ownership of the IP. Yeah.
Well, if there is a legal document showing that money was paid for it, that's part of the chain of title, and that will be sufficient.
Got it. Yeah.
And if there's a writer's agreement, then that will be sufficient. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Mm.
Yeah, but sometimes like different people has a different, surprisingly different contract, or sign the contract sometimes. That's why we need a
Uh-uh.
lawyer, right?
Yeah, that would be you would have to get a lawyer to parse it out, to figure it out, to untangle it. Yeah. Yeah,
네.
unfortunately.
지금 말씀드린 부분이 좀 답변이 됐으면 좋겠습니다. 이거를 다시 제가 뭐 정리해서 한국말로 말씀을 드리면 또 시간이 많이 지연이 되니까 여기 일단은 번역된 거 보시고, 또 따로 질문이 필요하시면 어, 질문해 주시면은 컨진원에서 또 답변 드리도록 하겠습니다. 예, 그리고 어, 다음 답변은, yeah, there's a question regarding the shopping agreement.
Yes.
So the question is, if would it be possible to doing the contracting with the different people or company at the same time, so they can just work on the same time.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand.
So like there's a different people, different companies who wanna have a your IP, and whether you can sign shopping agreement to different companies at the same time.
No, shopping agreement is generally exclusive to one person. Otherwise, it doesn't benefit that person. There is no benefit. So but that person can go to various companies. And they can, so for example, I might sign a shopping agreement with a company, with an IP holder, and I might go to Sony, as well as Echo Lake, as well as Lionsgate. I can shop it to as many places that I want to see who might be interested. But if the IP holder has another person out there trying to sell it, it doesn't work.
Right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I know about this, but I'm
Yeah.
just trying to give you the question as if I'm the audience.
No. Totally understand.
But
Yeah.
at
I
the
hope
same
that
time,
clarifies.
right. I mean, but at the
Clarifies
same
things.
time, the adding to that one
Yes.
is that if it depending on the territory as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're not gonna give a shopping agreement for the same region, but definitely you're gonna be, if the territory is divided. For example, like you can give someone who only one person to for the North America, but
Right.
meanwhile you can give it to other, South America, Central America, or Asia.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
that concept, definitely you can do shopping agreement for different people, but not for the same region. That's the same thing.
Exactly. So, and I would really strongly recommend that you consider Canada and the US one territory. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
But yes, exactly.
Right.
Mhm.
And the next one, there's some, many questions like this.
Okay.
Give me a second. So I'll
Okay,
try
take your
to
time.
kind of choose the questions that, can be, yeah, so there was one question saying, so for sure it will be depending on the situation, but who's gonna be the kind of key man, the like designated person who like, I guess that this is about the buying. So just as person asked as a buyer, the buying, the key man for the buying is whether it's going to be showrunner or producer. So I guess it's like trying to purchase the IP. When the IP is purchased, who's going to be key person, purchasing it?
That will be the studio or the streamer. So that could be either Netflix, or if you're doing a studio, it could be NBC or ABC, FX, that they will be the ones, the people who have the money will be the ones who will be purchasing it, and they will be the key people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I
Okay.
guess like also this question is related probably representative. So maybe
Ah,
like a purchasing IP is sometimes directly done by the studio
yes.
or streamer, but
Yes.
many times it's a showrunner or
Mm,
producer.
mhm,
For example, like they're gonna contact Korean writer or studio who has rights for the
yes.
IP. Then
Mhm,
they're gonna contact first, and then they're gonna make a shopping agreement or deal, and then they're gonna try to contact the studios or streamers to
mhm.
make it next process steps.
Yes. So there are variations. So for example, if you have someone like, and I don't think he'll mind me using him, David Shore.
Yeah.
And David Shore has a multi-million-dollar deal with, I think, US Universal right now, NBC Universal. I may be wrong on that. Um, he might find a piece of, uh, he might find a show that he wants to remake, like he did with The Good Doctor.
Mhm.
And because he has the money of this studio and network behind him, instead of having a shopping agreement, he might just go ahead and option the project.
Sure.
And then they will try and develop the project. And if it looks good, then they will buy it.
Right.
Now, if David Shore is not watching K-dramas, but I am, and you want to have a shopping agreement with me who doesn't have $1 million deal,
Yeah.
I can call David up and say, hey, David, let's have lunch. Let me see if I can interest you in this project.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I
Okay.
guess that makes sense for
Yeah.
the person who asked the question.
Good.
Thank
Uh-huh.
you.
Mm.
So the other one is the hearsay. This person is a writer and is quite difficult to meet like production companies or showrunners. Um, so basically, how this person can share their projects.
Ah,
I guess like this is like one of the thing I've been doing with the Coca LA Center.
yeah.
Um, so if that's the question aligns with that, then but you can just
Well,
yeah.
my answer would be I would refer them to you because of the meetings that you've been holding at the LA Center. Yeah. Because that is can be a really good forum for introducing IP holders, writers, whatever, with interested
Mm,
Writers Guild, showrunners, head writers, etc.,
yeah.
and
So
producers. Mhm.
right, right. 예, 그래서 제가 잠깐 한국말로 설명을 드리면, 이거는 이제 세라님도 다 이미 아시는 거고요. 예, 저희는 이제 같이 어, 잘 알고 여러 가지 정보도 쉐어할 것 같은 이제 뭐 작품도 같이 할 수 있는 부분들도 얘기 나누고 있고요. 그래서 제가 말씀드리면 지금 누나 하신 분이 한국에 계실 수도 있고 미국에 계실 수도 있는데요. 저희가 컨진원 LA 센터에서 쇼케이스를 하고 있습니다. 작년부터. 그래서 이게 어떤 거냐면 한국의 IP 홀더 제작사분이나 작가 뭐 컴퍼니지만 기본적으로 회사가 되어야 되지만 뭐 프로덕션 회사도 되고 웹툰 회사도 되고 뭐 제작사도 되고 기존에 갖고 계신 드라마, 영화 아니면 웹툰 뭐 아니면 오리지널 스토리도 괜찮습니다. 이런 것들을 가지고 계신 회사가 지원을 하시면 이분들에서 선정된 8개 회사가 를 저희가 이제 미국에 모시고 그 전에 컨설팅도 해드리고 그리고 그분들이 저희가 WJ 라이터 지금 사라 작가님도 거기에 소속돼 계신데 WJ 라이터들 분들하고 쇼케이스 분들을 이 피칭 쇼케이스에 초대를 하고요. 예, 작년에도 3, 40분, 올해는 더 많은 분들이 올 걸로 기대하고 있는데, 예, 그 분들 앞에서 그 작품에서 피칭할 수 있는 기회를 드려요. 그래서 피칭을 하고 거기서 좋은 작품이 있으면은 작가분들하고 또 1대1로 상담을 하시고 또 거기서 계약까지, 그러니까 뭐 쇼핑딜이든 아니면 뭐 서로 같이 작업할 수 있는 그런 계약을 하실 수 있는 그런 좋은 기회가 있습니다. 그래서 나중에 요
음.
부분에서 궁금하신 부분 있으시면 알려주시면 저희가 정보를 따로 제공해 드리겠습니다. 네. So there's we already like past
Oh,
1 hour frame,
okay.
but if you don't mind, I will just go just one more question, like
Of course,
if you
of
don't
course.
mind. Yeah.
Not at all.
Let me see here.
Mm,
This is like a question, but this is like kind of long question. I mean, but it looks like this audience has a great case. So
okay.
I would just ask, gonna just part of the question to you. So he, or she says the audience, this audience is a writer,
Mm,
and soon this person is gonna have a meeting with Netflix
ah,
headquarters in the US.
nice.
Then, um, if they're gonna decide to make a original Netflix original, um, and then he wanna still keep the IP, part of the IP, and net profit, uh,
Mm,
and also gross profit. I guess it's like one of those. And
mm.
then, um, should this person has to, bring some investment or um like not. And also he want to, just communicate with you regarding his project.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I know some, because I've
Mm-hmm.
been doing this, like the process
Uh-huh.
already with many projects,
Uh-huh.
but just go ahead and you can just answer first. Yeah.
Well, again, what you're talking about, probably you should get a licensed agent to work with you when you're talking with, or an IP lawyer to talk with Netflix, so that you can negotiate whether you're giving Netflix exclusive rights to everything, or if you're giving them exclusive rights to just a specific territory, and therefore you can keep non-exclusive rights, or you can keep part of the IP for you to license out in other places. And again, that would be part of the negotiation. Ethan, I'm curious to see how you would answer this also, since you're doing this every day almost. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, basically, as you know, Netflix wouldn't, they try to hold their own, everything pretty much themselves. Um, but hopefully they can change, But as for now,
Hmm.
not only the Netflix but all the other studios pretty much, keep their IP once they, purchase it because they have to spend a lot of money to
Hmm.
make it happen. And as you mentioned, I just wanted to mention that one good point that you brought up because in Korea, the TV series is only, they aiming for most of time for just one season. But,
Yes,
US or Canada, it almost doesn't make sense to creating a show for one season because they have to make it as a franchise and make it a seasonal. Otherwise, they cannot recoup the money they spent for marketing and other aspects, right?
exactly right.
So, yeah. So that's probably gonna difficult.
Hmm.
그래서 제가 지금 잠깐 말씀드렸는데요. 예, 저는 이제 이런 작업들을 한국 IP를 미국 작품을 만드는 것들을 계속 하고 있고, 물론 이제 세라님도 하고 계시고 그렇지만, 그래서 뭐 이게 지금 질문들이 굉장히 많으셔가지고 이 부분들을 지금 다 설명드리기에는 좀 시간이 한계가 있을 것 같고요. 어, 따로 좀 정리해서 이메일이나 이런 걸로 주시면 저희가 좀 가능한 한 상세하게 답변을 드리도록 하겠습니다. 그래서 LA 비즈니스센터 콘텐츠진흥원 LA 비즈니스센터로 이제 질문 주시면 그거 통해서 뭐 전화 아니면 세라님한테 이제 연락 주실 거고 그러면 답변을 최대한 드리도록 그렇게 하겠습니다. 네, 그리고 아까 답변 주신 부분 중에서 아직 답변이 좀 뭐 충분하지 않다고 느끼신 분이 있는 것 같으니까 본인이 작가로서 그런 어떤 그러니까 뭐 어떻게 프로덕션 컴퍼니나 아니면은 그런 것 본인 작품을 쇼케이스 할 수 있나 그래서 제가 아까 말씀드린 LA 컨진원에서 하고 있는 그리고 LA 비즈니스센터 코카 비즈니스센터에서 지금 핵심적으로 또 추진하고 있는 그 쇼케이스 같은 거 활용하시면 좋을 것 같고요. 예, 그리고 그 쇼케이스 아니라도 말씀하신 것처럼 이제 뭐 저도 그렇고 아니면 다른 이런 프로듀서 분들이나 에이전트 분들이 계세요. 그런 IP를 갖고 미국으로 이렇게 미국 TV 시리즈나 영화를 만들려고 하고 계시는 분들이 있고 또 아니면 뭐 정말 미국에 있는 큰 어, 에이전트들을 물론 쉽지는 않지만 사실상 하지만 어느 정도 또 이렇게 컨택 하셔가지고 그런 정보를 얻고 하시는 방법도 있습니다. 예, 그래서 뭐 지금 시간 관계상 어, 이메일이나 사후에 보내주시면 또 좀 자세히 설명드리도록 하겠습니다. 예, 그리고 yeah, there's a lot of questions.
So,
Yeah.
the last, will you be handing out or making available the PDF of the slideshow?
Oh yeah, I mean that would be great. I mean, actually a lot of people asked about if would it be
Uh-huh.
possible for you to
I,
share.
I
Yeah.
think I sent Kate that so that it can be distributed.
I mean
Um,
the script you send the script, but
I,
also the
I can
PowerPoint.
resend. I
Yeah,
can resend the a PDF to you.
yeah.
Uh,
I mean the PDF, PPT, the presentation, PowerPoint
yes, the PDF. It is a PDF of the PPT.
PDF. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then the last page has resources like the connection to the signatory and writers guilds,
Mm.
et cetera. And it also has my contact information if people want to connect with me afterwards. Could that work?
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah.
Cool. I can send that to you after we're finished here.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So hold on a second here. Um, yeah, there's other questions, but I guess like we are running out of time.
Ah,
I try to do my best to, like answer as much as that we could.
okay.
Um, since you just, really appreciate your time today. It's just very helpful. I mean,
I hope this
information.
was
So
helpful.
yeah.
Thank you for your patient listening. I really appreciate it.
So let me see. Yeah, I guess like yeah, this is like a little bit similar questions, and yeah, I guess like it's gonna take a little bit more time. Let me see one more question. Yeah, the other questions probably has to answer by the email or some other session. So
Okay.
yeah. Alright.
No worries, no worries.
죄송하지만 예, 저희가 시간이 또 다 됐고 그래서 좀 마무리해야 될 것 같습니다. 아쉽지만 예, 그래서 제가 말씀드린 것처럼 그 컨지넌 웹사이트에서 한번 찾아보시면 그 이미 제가 보니까 여기 지금 참석하신 회사 분들 중에서도 저 쇼케이스를 통해서 이제 또 그런 참여하신 분들도 있는 것 같고 또 꼭 그 뭐 쇼케이스 아니라도 다양한 정보를 저희가 좀 제공해 드리도록 노력할 테니까 사후에 뭐 이메일을 통해서 이제 연락 주시면 감사하겠습니다. 그리고 제 이메일도 연락처도 여기다가 지금 제가 답변 창에다가 올려도 되는지 안 되는지 제가 컨진원하고 잘 논의된 부분은 없어서요. 예, 그 원하시면 컨진원 측에 이메일로 문의 주시면 거기서 제 연락처나 또는 뭐 이메일이나 제가 뭐 저는 드리는 건 상관없으니까요. 예, 그렇게 해가지고 질문 주시면 저도 최대한 답변 드리도록 하겠습니다. 네. 네, 그리고 PDF 파일 관련해서 이 부분은 지금 저기 질문 주셨는데요. PDF 파일은 어, 지금 위에 요 스크립은 있습니다. 스크립은 맨 위쪽으로 가시면 요 지금 오늘 세라님이 답변 주신 그러니까 말씀하신 요 부분을 다 정말 다 스크립을 영문하고 또 한글로 해놓은 부분이 있으니까요. 그 부분 보시면 되고 아까 말씀하신 것처럼 파워포인트 그 자체 그거는 어, 저희가 이후에 뭐 요청하시는 분들에게 이메일로 전달을 해드리던 뭐 이렇게 해야 될 것 같습니다. 네. 그리고 예,
And
네, 우선은 여기까지 하는 걸로 하겠습니다. 예, 오늘 시간 내셔서 참여해 주셔가지고 너무 감사드리고요. 예, Sarah, do you have anything in order just to close this session?
no, I just really appreciate your kind listening, and I will send you the PDF of the PowerPoint, and with my information on the end, and feel free to contact me with questions.
All right, sounds
Yeah,
good. Yeah, all
great.
right,
Thank you.
thank you. 네,
Thank you,
감사합니다.
Sarah.
네,
Thank you.
Yeah.
네, 여기서 마치도록 하겠습니다. 예,
네.
감사합니다.
감사합니다.
감사합니다.